Okay, let's have a little look. Okay. Oh yeah, in terms of colors, just check. Aronian is white, Topalov black. Aronian white, Topalov black. Kitty kitty hiss hiss. I don't know if I've played him or not. I've played a lot of Blitz games online against a lot of people. I don't remember who they were. So, no idea. The name doesn't stick in my mind. I don't remember playing someone named King Crusher. Isn't it King Crusher? But I don't know what his handles might be. I really don't know very much. Okay, what is going on here with Bishop D2? Let's look at our game. Rook E1. Okay, so far so reasonable. White has engineered D4. Could Black have stopped it by playing E5? Maybe, but they've already played E6. That makes sense. And if they play E5 as well, White can play D4 sacking and then knight to B5 or something. Yeah, so okay, so Black allows D4. So we get this position. And here, after A6, this Bishop D2 is really weird. You would think White was going to play B3 and Bishop B2. And then, I don't know, maybe Black's plan was to play B5, or I'm not sure, maybe A6 was just to stop knight B5. Maybe now knight F5 would be worth calculating here. I think my only move to defend D4 is this. Now, does anything worse happen to me, or can I hold my position here? I need a couple moves to play like Bishop B2, then like Rook B1 before I'm not hanging everything. This looks fine for White. Okay, I don't see anything really stupid about B3. He plays Bishop D2. So now the first thing I have to ask is, can Black take this pawn on D4? Black didn't. Okay, so why did Topalov not take? Take. Bishop H6, Bishop G7. What's wrong with taking? I'm just going to move pieces, guys. Make it go faster. Alright, so I was thinking maybe Bishop H6 here, and then Bishop G7. And then takes, King takes, Queen D4, King G8. Queen D4, Rook G1. I can see how this could be good for White. Because, and maybe I should have just gone to D2 instead of D4. Because you can follow up with G4 anytime you want this, and Black has to deal with these queenside pieces and the pressure on B7. Maybe it's even better if I just play Queen D2, I don't know. And then, like, I'm threatening just Rook D1, Knight E4 kind of moves. And Black hasn't developed this yet, right? Queen. Oh, Knight E4 you want to see? Yeah, that might be a good move too. Queen D4 here, and now Knight E4. Knight F5. Seems to be the only move. Now, you see with Knight F6, King H8, and you don't have double checks. So, maybe you have to play like Queen C3 here to threaten stuff. Then Black has to play like E5 or F6. Then Rook here, threatening Knight D6, Knight D6, C5 maybe? Knight B5, I don't know. This works, I think. I'm sure there's like a million ways for black not to fall into my tactic. This looks totally playable, Vazan. I'm not sure if it's better or worse, but I can see why black didn't take on d4 at this point, at least, let's say. So he doesn't take on d4. That position is indeed bad after white trades the dark square bishops on h6. So rook b8, rook c1, makes sense. b6, yeah, he's just evacuating the diagonal of this bishop on g2 so he can play bishop b7. He's not even playing b5 here because white could play like a dc. Well, yeah, he's not even playing b5 here because white can basically play like a d takes c type position where this pawn becomes weak, right? And his rook's well placed on the c file. Maybe trading isn't good because it lets black play c4 at some point. But maybe like knight e4 is good. Maybe b3 is okay. Or maybe queen e2. I don't know. When you right click, it makes moves for you. I'm going to say knight e4 probably is the most promising, actually. Just opening the rook right away and looking at knight c5. On c5, the knight's actually pretty good. And here we're also looking at ideas like bishop c3 or cb5. I think that's pretty good for white. So even though he played a6 and rook b8, I think we can deduce that the idea of a6 was not to play b5, but to stop knight b5. Fighting for the d4 and d6 squares. These are both very, very key squares here, d6 and d4. So a6 was just to get rid of knight b5 ideas. And rook b8 is just to evacuate this diagonal from the bishop and then follow with b6, evacuating the pawn. And I think he'll play bishop b7 next move, probably. No. I'm wrong. Okay, so they're fighting over d4 heavily. Interesting that black's not yet committing this bishop on c8. That is another interesting wrinkle. Knight a2. Yeah, here a3 doesn't stop knight a2 because black just wants to trade this bishop. What? Holy sacrifice. Whoa. Okay, that changes the pace of the game. Well, I guess knight b4 is super committal here, right? Because it doesn't have a retreat. He could play a5, but it weakens b5 and the queenside in general pretty badly. So a5 is not like super desirable positionally. He could play e4, knight d2, knight d3. That seems like a whole interesting option as well. Let's see how bad it is. Like here, maybe here, here, here. So this pawn on e4 is obviously super shaky. Could I play f5 before knight d3 maybe? I suppose I could. But let's just say I play knight d3 first. And now we'll move this rook somewhere. You could sack an exchange with knight e4 and not be like losing, but probably not like, probably no real chances to play for an advantage after knight e4. So let's just move the rook somewhere. Now is the knight getting trapped here? Knight b2, queen c2. Queen c2, knight d3, knight e4. I don't even know which knight. The knight can always get out through e5 now. So basically we can get like a normal-ish Benoni with the dark squared bishops traded. I don't like this for black one bit. I like this for white. So that means I should probably have tried f5 for black here if I want to justify everything I've done. I don't have a great feeling about this for black. The sun's actually down by now. This sunlight is just a lamp aimed right at my face, and I'm in like this super dark room. But maybe you were just joking, Helio. You're kind of a sun jokester anyway, just from your name. I'm not liking this for black. I'm thinking white covers b2 and like breaks this up at some point with like f3. Thinking queen c2, f3. Maybe it's playable for black. It's weird. It has the potential to transpose to Benoni positions, I know, but until things clarify, like one or two moves down the road, I can't really predict how good or bad this is going to be. Well, I guess we can say this. This doesn't lose for black. This doesn't lose for black. They can definitely play a position like this, because it looks like black's definitely getting this b5 pawn break in exchange for having lost the dark squared bishop, and he's traded one or two pieces, potentially. Well, maybe only one. So I'm going to say this is like playable insofar as like asking whether or not black had to sack a piece. So let's go back to the piece sacrifice. So black plays b5. This is Topalov, who's got something like 6 losses and a draw at this point in the tournament, or sorry, 6 losses and 2 draws. So he plays b5 rather than that e4 option, which seems pretty playable. a3, now he's got to make the sack. And now I guess he can get another pawn on d5 because this bishop is trapped, right? And he does. Okay. I could understand playing this. Yeah, I mean, you're putting some pressure on white. You've got all this like space. The white pieces are tangled up, and like none of these pieces seem to know where they're going anymore. Sure. Let's see. c3, however, loses your pawn back probably. c3, bc3, b3, queen b2. Your best move here might be c3 actually. Looks like he didn't play it. But then this move, and then like queen b2 or something, and now like these pieces are still sealed in by this pawn, and I don't know, you play like queen c7 to control c4, and then like bishop e6, rook c8, knight b6 to c4 or something. This looks kind of playable for black. I mean, now it's only 2 pawns, but this pawn is pretty strong and this pawn is pretty bad. I don't know. Worth consideration. In the game, he plays bishop e6, I thought. Oh no, he did play c3. Huh. Wow. Alright, sweet. So this is a sealer sweeper type sacrifice. You're sealing c3 from white's pieces. No, sealer sweeper. And you're freeing this c4 square for your piece. So it's like a clearance and an obstruction at once. And okay, and Aronian played queen b1, not queen b2 like I first guessed. So now he aims for b2 and bishop f5. And he has to play queen b2. Okay, yeah, so my move was actually probably better. Queen b2 was probably better than queen b1. Okay, queen c7, yep, just all the things you would expect. And now he plays c4, just sacking the pawn before black comes to the c4 square so that he can at least move these pieces. So this position should be pretty playable for black, maybe a slight advantage for white, but playable. Playable. The b3 pawn's really strong. And black has 3 pawns total. Yeah, white's getting his pieces to the queen side now, and he can play like bishop f1 at some point and win the a6 pawn. Huh, no bishop f1 here? I guess on bishop f1, queen g4, wasn't sure what to do about the knight on f3, but how about just bishop e2? Switching to here, keeping an eye on this, and still making weird threats against the queen. That seems good for white. A little bit. I guess black has to just sack this pawn and go knight b6, knight c4 still, probably. And if knight b6, knight e5, what happens here? Oh, Stockfish running in the corner points out something, which is this. Beautiful, the importance of the square on c4. Black can just sack the queen here, and then since the queen is trapped, this shows the importance of this like c4 square that I was gunning for, and it also shows how bad a blockader the queen is. Queens are famous for being bad blockaders. Basically, you know, black can do like this, and then they can take here, and, you know, queen somewhere here, grab this, and play b2. And black's got a bishop pair, and a rook, and an a pawn. It's great, right? Black's doing fantastically here. That's pretty sweet. So I guess Aronian was kind of worried about some of this stuff. Probably knight b6 here. He probably saw this idea, and that's why he plays e4 to cut the queen off from this side of the board before going for bishop f1. He probably thought he had good long-term chances in this position. Okay, so he's covered knight c4, so Topalov switches to just putting the knight on c5 and defending his pawns. He's just going to defend for a bit, but Aronian can always trade off that knight. This is not... Yeah, this is still a bit of a struggle. Rook c8. Okay. Seems like white should be able to take the pawn now. My feeling would be that now you can just take one of these pawns. I don't know. How long are you supposed to wait as white? If you never take, you never win. What does he do? Knight d2. What's that going for? Oh, so knight d2 is to get control of the c4 square. That feels very dangerous for black. If white gets control of this square here, then he can leave black with this like super bad dark squared bishop and get knights on like c4 and d5 and get like the kind of position that you can win even if you're not up a piece. Because he'll be up like 2 pieces instead of 1 at that point. Okay, I can understand why he went for all this. How good is white doing here? Okay, so queen c6 fighting back for c4. If bishop b3, then I'm guessing there's a tactic here with like rook takes b3, right? With rook takes c3, takes, 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 and then however you take, he takes here. And then black's up pawns. So there's no taking the pawn, so Aronian goes to d5, trade. Can't take with the knight here because of rook c3, so that hurts white's chances a little bit to play the d5 square, so he can't use his knights, and black has the e4 now. Actually, that's an understatement. That hurts white's chances a lot to have to play d5 with a pawn. He retreats. My Stockfish is pointing out that he could play rook takes d5 if he wanted to because of knight d5, queen a4 being fully playable for black. Stockfish says black's a little bit better there even. So amazingly, this sacrifice is completely panned out for Topalov. He's totally in the game. Aronian goes here, going after b3, a4. So now rook a4, rook c3, right? So white is in danger of these pawns like surviving forever. So what options are there? There's knight a4, knight e4. He goes for knight a4. What about rook here to b5? I guess it's already defended, so you just play knight c3 and bring your knight back into the game. Okay, never mind. e4 maybe? Yeah, there's no tactic for black, and they only have 2 pawns instead of 3 now, so we need to do better than this. Okay, hang on. What happened in the game? This move, this move. Huh. Well, basically 2 pawns is not enough, so Topalov's going to have to do something pretty sweet here. And I don't really see what that's going to be. It's a weird position. I mean, temporarily White's pieces are all super passive, so he's got some time to try and fix this. I mean, to try and get something out of this. Okay, if the knight moves, rook b2. d5. So White is neither untangling nor is Black able to find a way to attack so far. And here comes his d-pawn. This game is intense, huh? This, like, that you have, like, a piece sack that lasts, like, 20 or 30 moves without either player obviously getting the upper hand. I kind of like for Black that he got the pawn to d3. I feel like that's some progress for him. It gives him ideas of, like, you know, d2, rook c2, rook e2, stuff to, like, interfere with on the second rank. And his bishop is, like, open forever now, so he doesn't have to worry about ever getting a pawn blocked on e5 or d4 and blocking his bishop. So I like Black's position here, but it is probably pretty close to equal since he's not making much. Since things are kind of slow going. Whoa! Sorry, I went too fast. Queen a4. Now you would expect like e3 here, but he plays h4, allowing the queen to come to e4, trying to trade queens. But that sacks the knight. Okay. So yeah, so he does that. And now Black is just better. Wow, so Aronian just could not get his pieces into the game in time and got so worried about this h5, h4. See, what Topalov can do here at some point is play hg. Like, if we keep sitting around for White, I don't know. Like knight d2 or something like that. What he can do is he starts chipping away at this thing here, hg, hg, and then at some point he can play a move like e3. And once he's traded the h-pawn, this e3 move becomes much stronger, because after f takes e3, g3 is completely undefended. And now, I don't know, like bishop e5 maybe? Rook to c6, and bishop takes g3. Right? And you can see how, I mean, I'm not saying for sure this is good for Black in this exact position, but you can see how in general something like this can be pretty strong for Black, give them pretty good play or counterplay on the king side. You know, and a move like rook b2 is really hanging over White as well in these positions. Yeah. So that's what he was kind of like afraid of, that makes him like lose patience and just sack the queen and try and draw this endgame here. But this d pawn, if he can't trade off this d pawn, it's going to be critical. So here rook b1 is the threat. So he's got to play rook d7. Now rook e1 is the threat. Now bishop e3 is the threat. Oh, he just resigned here. Stockfish is also flashing red -7 on every move. Yeah, I think Black's basically winning this endgame. this one here after the trade. I mean, unless he can get behind the pawn right away and not even let it get to d2, right? Like, he would have to play this instead of grabbing this h-pawn. This was really irrelevant, just grabbing the h-pawn. I don't like that move, actually, now that I like played a little bit slower. Now that I'm playing through it a little bit slower, this is like a fully wasted move, and you guys have probably seen a million games where someone just leaves a pawn hanging on h4, and people don't take it. Because after you take it, you're not really up a pawn, right? You've got 3 against 2, but these 3 in quality are no better than these 2. Like, pretty much at best, you play h5 at some point, and then trade after gh5, and like maybe it's equal pawns, right? I think probably the reason for this is a fear of black playing h3, and then him having to worry about his back rank, as well as the passed pawn. But yeah, my first time like stopping on this position and thinking about how you would play it as white, my thought is you got to get behind this pawn immediately with rook d7. You know, it's interesting. Black didn't even ever play like rook to d8, stopping rook d7, which is, you know, the next thing you would think is maybe black can play rook d8. Maybe then white has rook to c8, and that might be why he didn't do it, because this thing is just like hanging, right? And then you trade this. And first of all, this is a little bit awkward for black anyway with knight g5 and knight f7 and stuff, right? But secondly, your rook can always get behind this pawn now. And then you don't have 2 rooks to work with for black for like making activity. Okay, so that's why black doesn't play rook d8. So gh4, black goes just bishop h6. Yeah, and right away after bishop h6, Stockfish is lighting up that suddenly white's in trouble here, because black wins control of this d2 square. And yeah, these positions is like really, really brutal once he gets this in. Hey Chess Beast, been a while, huh? How are you? I recognize you're 51. I know it's the Chess Beast we're familiar with here. So my thought would be you want to try rook d7 right away, and then the question is whether h3 is at all annoying. And you really try and keep this pawn under lock and key here, but now there's some threats of rook to b1 coming in. I want to have time to play like knight g5, knight h3. I don't mean to play it there. It's obviously a misclick that loses to this move. But I want to have time to play knight g5, but without getting mated. It looks like I might need to bring my king out to get there. King f1 doesn't get out, though, because e2 is covered and rook b1 wins. So this is hard. Let's see. This move, maybe? And now if rook to b1, I can just take this and cover my problems, right? So rook d1, and now maybe bishop h6 here. I mean, this is the ending from the Aronian versus Topalov game, and white did lose this, but I'm just seeing if he can hold on by putting his rook on d7 behind the passed pawn. It looks like white might be holding on in this version. I mean, I'm thinking maybe like bishop h6 to stop knight g5 and looking at d2 options. But I don't know, maybe knight c5 would draw then, right? Like, I don't know. It's hard to actually hold this d3 pawn right now, in which case it'll be a dead draw. So, yeah, it looks like gh4 is probably a huge mistake compared to rook d7. But what a fantastic, fascinating game. Aronian sort of got outplayed by that whole thing. I mean, that Topalov could just like make that sack and like put him under pressure, and I don't know, it felt like a slightly more fun game to play as black than white. You know, not even not including the win at the end. But a lot of cool ideas from Topalov, including the way he played this position right here that we're at right now, where from here, you know, he's only got 2 pawns, white's slightly disorganized, and he finds this time to play e4, and then the rook on b5 to paralyze white because of the fear of rook b2. And then running this pawn to d3, so suddenly that becomes a threat. And then adding the h-pawn to the mix. I mean, this part here, he really just kind of destroyed Aronian from a position that looks pretty unclear, right? He got to a position where Aronian had to sack his queen and try and save a pawn down endgame. So that part he definitely played strong, and the part before it was super complicated. But overall, it seems like Topalov played really well today, despite being in this position where he'd lost a million games. And, you know, I mean, I think the only person to lose rating points in this tournament basically was Topalov. He like lost every single rating point that anyone else gained in the tournament. But I think he played pretty well today. So, but that's always been one of the things about Topalov. Is like no matter how badly he's playing, he can like bounce back and play an individually good game. It really doesn't get him down the same way it does some other players. I don't know. He plays kind of fearlessly and with abandon even when he's losing.